If I hear about a deal, it doesn't matter where it is because I have the same tools. I'll just manage from anywhere. But now learning the medium term space, I'm like, oh, actually, you should go really deep and you should pick one market or maybe two and like become that person in that market that is doing the housing. So people know you and that you're getting more referrals, right?
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, Zeona Weiss. Excited to be here today with another incredible guest. We have Zeona McIntyre, or as she's known in the podcast circuits, Z Money, or in the nightclubs. I don't know. Is that what they call you?
Oh man, the nightclubs. They haven't seen me in a while. So yeah, Z Money. I love it.
What's going on? How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. This is going to be fun.
Great to have you on the show. I mean, for someone who was also a podcast host, it's always a pleasure to get on a podcast because there's usually a more of a natural flow when you get in front of a microphone. Some people get a little scared, get a little, puckered up. They don't know what to say, when to say it. They get a little nervous, but you are a seasoned, not only podcast host, but seasoned investor. I'm just looking at your bio, looking through it here. First of all, if anyone can see the screen on the video here, she is the co-author of a great book published by Bigger Pockets called 30-Day Stay, all about midterm rentals. We've talked a lot about short-term rentals on this show. We've had many guests, but not too much about midterm rentals. So excited to talk to you a little bit about that and just in general about your journey from, real estate investing to financial freedom.
All right. Well, let's dive in.
Jump right in. So I want to give us a little bit of background. Like, when was the first time you started investing in real estate and how did you even stumble upon that? Was it by accident? Was it intentional?
Yeah, it was accidental. I've always loved homes and I always loved design. I'm the kind of person that someone invites me in and I want a tour. I want to know how you live, I want to see the whole place. And so I thought for a long time I would do something in that space, but it just never really came together. So I sort of left that on the back burner. But when I was in massage school, I was 26. This is 2011. My friend found out about Airbnb. He's living in New York City, and that's kind of like where you hear about things first. And he was in a place in his life that he had just got laid off, and he had this really expensive lease. And he's like, man, I just need to travel. I'm feeling like burnt out. And I've got this expensive lease, and I'm wondering if I can use this Airbnb thing and, travel the world instead and just cover my bases. And so after a while, it's doing so well. He keeps bothering me saying, man, you got to try this. It's killer. And I'm busy and doing other things. I live in Boulder, Colorado. So I'm thinking it's not going to do the same as something in New York. So leave me alone. Mm-hmm. But after a year in 2012, he comes back to me and says, I made $50,000 off an apartment I did not own. And then back then, $50,000 was like a starting tech salary, it was like $100,000, it felt like a lot of money. And at that age, I'd never seen that much money. I was still working, hourly wage.
Right.
And so it really lit me up. And I said, you know what? I'm going to listen to you now. Let's go do it. I'll try this out. And so what happened to me is that at the same time, I was renting a 2-bedroom apartment. I had furnished the whole place and my roommate was moving out. And so I thought, well, it's perfect timing. I can use her room. I can try this Airbnb thing. If it doesn't work, I'll just get another roommate, right. Cut my losses. I've got sheets, I've got towels. I don't need to spend any money on this. And so it worked. And that was kind of the gateway into it, but it worked so well. I was renting out her former room. Then I was renting my room and trading with friends to go stay at their places, buying them breakfast, babysitting, doing whatever I could do to get out of my house. And that eventually turned into more apartments and then buying out of state. So kind of all evolved from there.
That's so cool. I imagine, if I was in your shoes, just hearing that story, like if I was trying to get out of my place and then, moving into other, I would want to travel. Right. That seems like a natural thing. Is that anything you started to do?
Yeah. So I was already a big traveler and I've now been to 48 countries. I was
Oh,
going to say
wow.
states.
How many
Like,
states?
I
Do you know
don't
how
think
many
I've been to that
states?
many states, actually. I
48
don't know how many
countries.
states, but yeah, 48 countries. So I've
Wow.
been a lot of places. And so I was traveling a lot, but while I was staying in Boulder, I started pet sitting. I was just trying to do whatever I could do to get out of my place. Cause whenever I was out, I was making the most money.
Hmm.
So I did that for probably 2 years of hustling between places.
Wow. So 40,
Yeah.
let me ask you just a question on that. 48
Yeah.
countries, that's pretty incredible. I haven't been to that many,
Hmm.
or states for that matter, but I've been to quite a bit, I think 30 something states at this point. But what's the best country, or not best, but what was one thing that stood out to you, like one country that you just loved or would love to go back to?
Yeah, I really love South Africa. There's just
Interesting.
a lot of diversity there. So, not only with the people, because you get this mix of all these different African countries plus the Dutch. And then you don't really see the same mixes that we see in the US. Everything is kind of mixed in the US with some kind of Hispanic influence. And
Mm.
that's not reached there because it's just too far away. And so it's really different. You've got more of like Indian and just different cultures. And so such beautiful, unique looking people. I think it's like 11 national languages. You're hearing so many languages in the streets. And there's a lot of music, a lot of jazz, and the buildings are so colorful, like in the Caribbean. There's just a lot to like. It's
Yeah.
a really magical place.
And there's some great safari, like you go out into
Yeah.
the
Surfing and mountain climbing and all kinds of stuff.
so much.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad I asked you. It's one country I have not yet been to, but I've definitely seen pictures and heard great things from people that I know who have lived there. So appreciate that. Let's move back to, you co-authored this book, 30 Day
Yes.
Stay. It's a recent publication, correct?
Yeah, officially launched from Bigger Pockets 5 days ago.
No, really?
Yeah.
I'm like, I saw this before. I don't know how long ago. Maybe I saw it in the pre-release.
Yeah.
I feel like I've seen this already for a while. 5 days ago. Okay. So obviously this podcast is going to air later but you guys go check out, we'll put a link in the show notes to the 30-day stay. Bigger Pockets, check out. They also have tons of incredible books out there, resources. If you guys haven't checked out the Bigger Pockets bookstore, besides for the podcast and all the other things in the forums, it is a wealth of information, so many different things, including this midterm rentals. Tell us about what midterm rentals are. I mean, I know, but maybe our audience doesn't. We've had many people talk about short-term rentals, vacation rentals, but midterm is like a new thing to us. So enlighten us as if I don't know what this is.
Yeah. So it's 30 days or more, which is the name of the book, 30 days stay.
That
And
makes sense.
that makes it easy. But yeah, so what you generally see in this space is like a 90-day stay, but it's anything over 30 days. And the reason for the 90 days is that travel nurses are a lot of our tenants and they get 13-week contracts, which end up being about 3 months.
Okay, got you. So, and how do you go about finding these type of midterm rental tenants?
Yeah, so I kind of stumbled into it again with Airbnb. That was kind of my primary place. And then you'll find that there is a little crossover. Some travel nurses are looking on Airbnb. So I kind of naturally stumbled into some of them. But now I also use Furnish Finder, which is a different website where that is primarily for traveling medical professionals. But now you're seeing a lot more people use it. So you'll see students and people, rehabbing a home or something where they're displaced for a short time. They'll be on that site too. So there's a lot of relocation, different kinds of tenants on there.
Okay, got you. One thing I've heard about the midterm rentals, which is, I'm sure you covered in the book, haven't read it yet, but is that once you get past 30 days, a lot of states or cities have certain rules regarding tenant rights, including, the inability to evict someone from your property. Whereas with traditional short-term rentals, which are just vacation rentals or short-term, less than 30 days, they don't have any tenant rights per se. And you can, if someone is just staying in your property, squatting as they call it, you can just call the police or get rid of them. Is that a challenge that you've actually encountered or come across ever? Or is it just kind of something out there?
I think, people often go to the worst case scenario, right?
Course.
It's like anytime they're considering something, they're like, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? And so I do hear this eviction thing. And it does come up probably more so in states like California, where it's even hard to evict someone. But I think the thing about medium term is that a lot of times people are already on their way out. So I find that we'll have digital nomads where they're in Denver for a month and then they're going to Austin and then they're going to Hawaii, and they've got a plan. They're going somewhere else. Same with the travel nurses. They're going to get an assignment before they're even done with your place in their next city. So I haven't had that where anybody tries to stay longer. They sometimes extend, but not in the like trying to stay for free sort of way.
Right. No, I mean, it also probably has to do maybe with, where you're finding your tenants. I think that's a big thing in general. And
yes.
The locations. And if you can share with us, like, where are your rentals across the
Oh my God, all over the place. That was not a good plan in my book. At the time, I was trying to be diversified and I had started in the short-term rental world. So I had managed properties all over the country. I had a stint that I was a property manager and co-hosting for people. And so I was like, well, I'll just follow the deal. If I hear about a deal, it doesn't matter where it is because I have the same tools. I'll just manage from anywhere. But now learning the medium-term space, I'm like, oh, actually, you should go really deep and you should pick one market or maybe two and like become that person in that market that is doing the housing. So people know you and that you're getting more referrals, right? So my places are in 4 states. I'm in Colorado, in 3 markets in Colorado. I'm in Florida, in 2 markets in Florida. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, and then I'm also in Washington State. And so really all over.
That's cool. So when you say you really, just followed the deal, you're serious. You're just like going all over. I mean, that's from Florida to Washington. You can't really get much further than apart.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I do a lot of investment consulting. So I'm talking to people and they're always just telling me about new markets. And I'm like, wow, never heard of that. Let me look into it. And then it works. So, we'll see. Okay. Everything changes over the time. So.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right when you're talking about going deep and finding a market and really becoming like the go-to expert or something. I mean, that's really with everything in real estate, especially if you can niche down and you can become that go-to person for that specific thing, it's much more likely people will remember you and you'll stand out. And I think that's one of the benefits of branding in general. But, especially when you're talking about a specific market, you get to be known, especially, if you're dealing with traveling nurses and they're all going to the same, hospitals or in medical facilities to travel to. You'll probably get some good reviews and you'll get some good references, also referrals from other nurses instead of going directly, through these platforms. I'm sure it'll come back directly through the clients as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to put you on the spot here and just ask you for a couple, if you would, just a couple really good tips in terms of turning your rental property, whether it be short-term, midterm, long-term, but I guess you can focus on the midterm because that's really what you're focusing on now. Turning that into a place where people really are attracted to, or people really want to go to.
Yeah. So, it really starts with your marketing. And what people don't realize is like you have this one thumbnail on these websites. You're just literally one photo. And so I'll have people call in and we'll talk about it and they'll say, I don't know why my place is not renting. And then I'll look at their ad and the first photo is like, I don't know, a chair in front of the front door because it's got like a pumpkin on it and it's Thanksgiving. I'm like, that is not everybody's scrolling right past that, You've got 1 second to sell people. You really got to make it shine. So I'm all about pro photos. I'm all about really stylish decor. You'll see on Airbnb, so general short-term rental platform, is that you're going to see there's a lot of designers and boutique hotels that have come into the space and really taken over. But in the medium-term space, in Furnish Finder, it's a lot of mom and pops. It's granny basements. And so they're not that professionally done and they're not that nice. And so nurses have been staying in those because that's all they could find. It's that or Motel 6, right? So if you come in and you've got really beautiful furniture and something that looks super cozy with throw blankets and stuff, they're super excited. It's a lot of women. So you got to play to that. Make your places really nice. Don't just like minimalist, college dorm, make it look like that,
That's really good advice. That's awesome because you're absolutely right. You're going to scroll right by if you're not impressed. And especially when you have a plethora of choices on Airbnb or VBRO, whatever you want to call it. Verbo, what do I call it?
It's Verbo. It's VRBO.
VRBO,
Vacation rental by owner.
Right. Those are platforms where once you go on there, you see these, and they're showing you I guess the algorithms or whatever are showing you like, the best properties or whatever that are going to stand out the most. So it's hard to stand out when you're, a starting out owner or just have one or two or a couple properties.
Yeah. So, all that SEO works from clicks. So you need to get clicks, and then those clicks continue to throw you to the top. So you've got to have something that's clickable.
Very interesting. Good to know. Okay. So those are already two amazing tips right there for us. You also, we can throw in 100 things into this podcast over here because we have such a short time, but I want our audience to kind of get to know you and get to know what's behind, what's driving you. Is there something that has led you starting out on accident and then moving into the space, doing consulting, doing the whole thing, buying, 10, 12 properties, wherever, all over the country? And what's really the drive? Is it the financial freedom? I don't want to put words in your mouth here, but what's driving you to continue growing this?
Yeah. I think for me, it's just the hustle. Like, I love the art of the deal. And I talk about kind of being addicted to buying homes. It's like, I think in my mind now, having been in real estate investing for 10 years plus, is like, I could probably just invest everything in syndications and sit back and not do anything, and that's probably a really smart way to go. But I am a real estate agent too. So I'm looking at properties all day for my clients, and it just makes me want to buy. So I am stuck in that a little bit where I love negotiating. I love getting a property. I love furnishing it and getting it going. So that's not going away.
That's awesome. If you are driven, you have something, the fire kind of burning in you just to keep doing the deal and keep getting another property, another one, just keep it going. Yeah. Eventually you'll find a way that, okay, maybe this is enough. But you are the co-host of a podcast. I don't know if I mentioned this at the very beginning, but you are the co-host of a podcast called, what is it called again?
Investify.
That was really bad of me, right? Investify. Invest to FI. FI is financial independence, right?
Yes.
That's a big driving factor for a lot of people. Is that being the co-host of a podcast like that? I'm sure you come across a lot of people or talk about different ways where people can become financially independent.
Yeah. Yeah. So Craig and I both achieved financial independence in our, mid to late 20s. And so we saw how fast it can happen when you use real estate. I still think that if you just follow the general tenets of the FIRE community and invest in index funds, you could probably do it in 10 years. But if you use real estate, it's a supercharger. And I've seen people do it in 2-5 years, something like that. And so, we're big believers in it, and we're collecting those people's stories. So if you guys are interested, go check out our podcast.
All right. Invest to FI. We'll make sure to put that in the show notes, and definitely going to check that out myself because it is something that is driving so many people to, and I'm so blessed to speak with incredible people like yourself on this show who have, achieved that as well, and at a relatively short period of time, and pretty much everyone through real estate, which is just incredible to me. So if you guys are listening to this podcast and you haven't really gotten it yet, that you can become financially independent through real estate on the plethora of different ways that we've had guests on this podcast talk about, I think it's about time that you really take some action. So Zeona, can you give our listeners maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 10? I don't care. Just tell them something about it, something they can do to take action today.
Yeah. So I think it's really good to get good at running numbers, because numbers don't lie. There's a lot of emotions that come into real estate. You can fall in love with a house. I do every day practically. But when you really get into that spreadsheet, it really tells you, hey, this is a deal or this is not a deal. And you see all the levers that you can pull to make a deal. And so running numbers is great. The other thing I think is really important, just because of the way our market is right now, with high prices still, high interest rates, is study creative financing. Get to know what your options are there. Seller financing, subject to. There are a lot of ways that you can take over properties for less down than you think. Lower interest rates, just all kinds of cool creative stuff out there, but it's a little bit complicated. So do your homework, but there's YouTube University. Get out there and just start listening and reading stuff. Definitely.
Yeah. There's so many good tips there. I'm not a huge numbers person, even though, I do the cost seg and that's my thing, but
numbers.
Yeah, no. Well, we have accountants and engineers and those people that are really the experts in doing the actual cost seg studies. I just kind of talk about it and pump it up. to the world, but it's something that to me, when I look at numbers on a financial statement or looking at underwriting a property, trying to figure out if it's going to work or not, it's difficult, if you never learned it.
Yeah.
But like you said, there are so many courses out there and there's great books. And we had Rob Beardsley on the podcast not too long ago, has an incredible book about underwriting. So guys, they're just excuses, really. I mean, we have excuses all the time that are holding us back from taking action, which is why I love to ask the guests, what's one, piece of action? What's something you can tell our listeners to do and jump out of their comfort zone and just do today?
Yeah, real estate's really forgiving. That's one thing I've seen over the 10 years of owning real estate is that I've bought some properties and I held on to them maybe 5 years and I've sold them since. And I know a lot of people talk about, oh, never sell anything in real estate. But you'll find that you buy some problem properties, something that's really old or needs lots of maintenance, and that's just not quite what you're willing to do, or something about the location, whatever. Mm-hmm. But you can still make great money trying something out and then realizing later, hey, actually, my favorite asset class is small multifamily. So I don't want these single family homes, and then switch out of them. It's not like you're stuck forever. So sometimes you just got to get in there and try.
That's incredible advice right there. I mean, especially you're one, you said yourself, you started with the short-term rentals and then kind of transitioned more recently into the midterm rentals. I mean, are you still doing the short-term? Do you still have properties that are running on that basis, or you've transitioned?
A little. So all my properties, I'll still use the medium term through the slower seasons because that helps with vacancy. But kind of just what I'm seeing in the market, it feels like with pending recession kind of weirdness, people are not traveling as much. They're a little bit cautious. And so I would rather work with people that are doing a placement for a job than something that's optional like travel, because I don't think it's going away, but it might just be on hiatus for a couple of years.
That's a really good point, because I have heard some pushback from, not pushback per se, but some complaints really from clients of mine and people I know who own vacation rentals and are getting much less occupancy than they would expect. I mean, Thanksgiving is coming up right now when we're recording this episode. The holiday season is coming shortly after that. And usually you're booked out, for a vacation rental, 3-6 weeks in advance, and especially for those times because they're very popular. And now people are still nothing, and it's really disheartening for a lot of people when this is your livelihood and this is your business and you're expecting it to run like one, and you can't have, and it's not consistent. It's very difficult to run a business without consistency.
Yeah, it's definitely tricky times, but there's always a way to make money in real estate. So you just got to kind of change with the times. That's why we're adapting into the medium term space.
Oh, good for you. That's amazing. And you've shared a lot of that information, that wealth of knowledge that you've experienced yourself in the book. So I'm excited to check it out myself. Definitely, it's on my reading list. And we're going to ask you for another one also very shortly, because we're going to transition to what we like to call now the final four. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests. So the first question for you, Zeona, is what is the worst job that you ever had?
It's funny. I don't know that I've had a lot of bad jobs. I just am not a good employee. That's the thing that I'll say is when you're entrepreneurial, you always think you can do it better. You know a different way to go. And so it's more that it's the people I've worked with that I've had a hard time with. So I'd say the last job that I had was working at a dispensary here in Colorado. And I just had a really hard time with my manager. So that would probably be the thing. It's just everything she did, I thought could be done differently.
I mean, that's really, sums up what an entrepreneur is,
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's good to hear. You haven't had a lot of bad experience, but being financially independent and you're your own boss and you're running your own businesses, that's the best. You don't have to worry about that. There's always good to
Maybe
hear.
I should have said me. I'm my own worst boss.
No, that's not good.
Worked myself so hard.
That's not good. You should be kinder to yourself.
Yeah.
Okay. So second question is, what's a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
Yeah. So this is interesting, but I would say The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. I just thought that book had a lot of philosophy and spirituality. And it's funny because I tried to read it again. It was my favorite book. And then I tried to read it again maybe a year ago. And I was just I cannot even read this. And I really think there's something about catching a book at the right time when it's everything that you can actually take in at that moment. And so at the time, that book really shaped me.
And I think this is a really important point you brought out there. It's something that I asked this question, what's giving you a paradigm? It doesn't have to be the latest paradigm shift because we go through so many stages in our lives. And hopefully we're constantly reading books that are changing the way we think about different things. And that's really the point of the question, to kind of bring something out. So that's a book I don't think I've come across before. So definitely put that on the reading list and in the show notes for our listeners to check that out, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. And, hopefully we'll come across another book that will help us open our mind to different things in the world. Third question, which we're going to move into now is, and you can take this any which way you want, which is, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
So maybe this is a little bit cheating, but I am just at the beginning of my creative finance journey. And I'm at this place of like negotiating the first few deals, trying to sell a couple of my places on seller financing so that I can understand what it's like on the sale side.
Oh, cool.
But I would love to really master that, because it's just the most like intricate but interesting thing that I've come across in real estate lately. And I love how like feverish I am about learning. It's like, I just want to watch all the YouTube videos. So it's been fun to have that craving.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, the fact that you're willing to like go through that process and sell some of your own properties through that so that you can acquire that experience of what that's like from the seller's perspective so that you can better understand it. That's incredible. I mean, I think that's just a brilliant way to approach a business model. Like, feel it from the other point of view. And so you can really understand the other person, because that's really what successful business transactions, come about, is when you can really understand the other party. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. I was just in Denver not too long ago and filmed a podcast with Terrence Doyle, hasn't aired yet, on the Bigger Pockets Multifamily Mentors podcast. And he talked a lot about seller financing and creative financing. And he had a guest, he told me, who hopefully I'm going to have as a guest on this show as well, a guy by the name of Cody Davis. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was on the Bigger Pockets podcast as well. And he's like 22 or 23 years old or something, and has focuses on seller financing. And he's done like 10, $20 million in deals already through that method. So something, definitely a lot of content out there, so much to learn, but that's a really cool skill or talent to learn. Seller financing, creative financing. Awesome. Fourth and final question, what does success mean to you?
I feel like so many things in my life are an intersection of like freedom and spirituality. It's like, I just want to be this like super Zen version of myself, and it doesn't always come out that way. But what brought me to financial independence is this desire for freedom. And the thing that happens to me is I get so busy and excited that I give up a lot of my freedom by building businesses or starting a new thing or committing to a mastermind or whatever it is. And I have to kind of bring myself back and say like, wow, I have everything I need now. How do I take care of like my spirit, my energy, my nervous system over just chasing a number of properties or a dollar amount or cash in the bank? So something in there. If that makes any sense.
It makes perfect sense. That's extremely important. No, I'm a very spiritual person as well. And, being spiritual doesn't necessarily conflict with being involved in business and being involved in, taking care of it. I think it's a really important thing that we need to learn. It just means being grounded and being connected to, a higher being. If you believe in that, right? There's a creator, and being connected to, what your goals are in life and your values, and just making sure that your businesses and whatever other things that are occupying your time aren't conflicting with those values that you hold true. And so I think that's really like what spiritual balance is all about. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I think that to me is a huge proponent of what success means as well. So love that answer. And finally, where can our listeners find you or reach out to you?
So my website, ZeonaMcIntyre.com, is just my name, but you can also find me on Instagram at Zeona McIntyre. And that's where I do the most interacting with people. I answer all my DMs. So check me out there. There's lots of places, YouTube, Facebook, I'm in all of them.
All right. LinkedIn? Are you on LinkedIn yet?
I'm on LinkedIn and on TikTok. And goes on and on. But Instagram's the easiest one.
Okay. Well, we'll make sure to put all that in the show notes, and hope our listeners can reach out to you, and hopefully they'll pick up the book as well, because it looks like it's going to be something we're all going to learn a thing or two. And I'm really interested as well as I'm continuing my real estate investing journey, trying to pick up a couple short-term or maybe now midterm rentals. We'll see. But
Great.
It's been really great speaking with you and catching up today. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you guys for listening all the way to the end once again. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.